Okay, and hey, finally, in 1980s news per Vox, just like the 14th century Black Death, breaking has gone viral in Paris.
And everywhere.
Yeah, it's spreading. It's spreading.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So I want to talk about not only what happened with this one particular dancer, but how we got here, because it's kind of it's more it was more intriguing, at least briefly, to me, and it turns out maybe it's not as exciting as I thought. It might be a story, but it highlights some interesting things in connection with the breaking community globally. Let's see. So I want to talk to you about Australia's the break dancer that Australia sent to the female, certainly female. I don't know. Did they have a male competitor? If you did, you wouldn't know. He was just buried by this one performer.
Not certain that they did. Yeah, I'm curious now.
Overshadowed by B-girl Raygun, born Rachel Gunn. But putting that aside for a moment, the fact that she didn't win any gold medals
or points.
It turns out that Paris was Australia's most successful games in the country's history, with 18 gold medals.
Yeah.
But it was this Raygun that I mentioned who finished far from the podium, but had the most viral moment. Not only did she not win a gold medal, she lost her 3-round robin breaking battles by shutouts, 18-0.
Right.
Her signature moves included the kangaroo paw. Did you see that one? She literally did this.
Yep.
Which were you gonna say something, Kat?
I was gonna say, do you know how they did the scoring? I was reading up on that.
No. No.
I can tell you that they were not. The points were not handed out as they are in other sports, like in gymnastics. Oh, you get a point for hitting this and hitting this and hitting this. It wasn't on any individual technical level. All the scoring for breaking was done as a comparison to the other person. So I just want to put that out there. It's not like she didn't earn any points. It's that the judges were comparing and saying, yep, okay, the other person gets the points.
That's true. Right.
That's one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Well, if you saw her perform, I'm going to go back up a little bit. If you saw her perform, you noticed her signature moves include the kangaroo paw, which quickly became the subject of countless memes and a parody sketch on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, in which he invited Rachel Dratch to play Raygun. And look, she does have fun with it, but her dancing is not all that different. It's very close.
Yeah.
Anyway, this had this appearance, and you should check it out if you haven't seen it. Had many questions. How did this 36-year-old academic get selected for the Olympic Games? And what I was suggesting earlier was that what made this story interesting to me was I came across some accounts that said that she unfairly took the spot away from someone else, that there was corruption involved, there was other chicanery where she and her husband were the committee that selected the person to go to the Olympics, and so she just chose herself. Now, as it turns out, all those things are false.
Okay, thank you because I saw mention of those things as well, and I wasn't able to spend time fact-checking today.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it turns out she's an accomplished jazz dancer and I think ballroom dancer.
Yes, ballroom.
So she is a dancer, and she started breakdancing about, I think, since 2010, so just, almost, 15 years ago, when her husband got her into the sport. But before we even had breakdancing in the Olympics, curiously enough, the World Dance Sport Federation, the WDSF, was devoted to getting ballroom dancing in the games. The association started in the late 1990s with a focus on winning a place for that activity before pivoting in 2017 towards breaking. And I'm gonna say a lot of names here that I'm definitely mispronouncing.
Okay.
I don't even know what country they're from or culture, so I have no clue as to maybe how I should be saying it.
Right.
And thinking it's Australia, this might be a New Zealander, like a native New Zealand name. Te Hiratanga Wapiha.
Okay.
Not bad.
Wapiha, a.k.a. Rush. I should probably just say Rush. One of the judges in the women's breaking final for the Oceania Championship that Gunn won to get to the Olympics posted a 90-minute live-streamed Instagram commentary in response to the controversy. He pointed out that the WDSF judging system, which was used in the Olympics and its breaking qualifiers, requires judges to be veterans in the breaking scene, both as competitors and as judges, and to pass multiple exams.
Wow.
I want that test. I want to know what it is.
Yeah.
Do they have a silhouette of a move and you have to identify it?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Is this popping or locking?
Windmill or headspin?
Describe the pros and cons of a power move versus doing top rock.
Right.
Is it called the centipede or the worm? Depends. That one's depends, I think, where you live.
Yeah.
Anyway, so just to point out the legitimacy of the folks involved in this process. So no shenanigans, at least on those different levels. It turns out, though, in addition to being a dancer, Gunn's day job is as a lecturer with research interests including the cultural politics of breaking. No joke.
Yeah.
She is a professor that lectures about the politics of breaking, and she's caught up in the most political sort of hullabaloo or certainly controversy with regard to breaking that. I don't ever probably right. I mean,
right.
not since you realized you could see the strings. They were holding up Michael Boogaloo Shrimp's broom in breaking.
Oh.
Has there been such a controversy?
Oh. Tomfoolery.
Yes.
Anyway, in addition to, before she made it to the Olympics, she represented Australia at the World Championships in Paris in 2021 and in Seoul in 2022. She didn't win those competitions either, but she did, obviously rank among the many competitors there. Prior to her Olympics appearance, she also, I just said that already, she also judged Red Bull's preeminent BC1 breaking contest. And she's been established as a local champ. So she does have some bona fides. Prior to doing the kangaroo paw. Yet, following her appearance at the Olympics, a petition circulated claiming without sources that she and her husband, breaking coach Samuel Free, had manipulated the entire WDSF system in order to gain a spot at the Olympics. This petition falsely claimed that, as I mentioned, Gunn had judged herself at the qualifier, despite the judges' list for the event being readily available online. So, surprise, right? That the internet's running with bullshit.
Yeah, conspiracy.
Anyway, that said, the subtext of the criticism that Gunn benefited from her whiteness has some merit, in particular because she attended an elite high school, and she has the opportunity to get a PhD in an obscure field. I mean, my parents discouraged me from becoming a writer or musician.
Right.
Can you imagine in the 1980s, I said, I'm going to be I'm going to get a doctorate, and I'm going to lecture about breakdancing? First, they'd probably say, look, you should start calling it breaking, because if you call it breakdancing, you're going to lose all credibility in the field.
Your parents would have said that?
Yeah, of course. Everybody knows that. But she also, more importantly, had enough funds, the money to be able to travel to these various competitions, which I think is the biggest, sort of benefit she had. And whether that comes from being white or, other things, but certainly statistically speaking, we're going to learn here that she did have the ability to do these things, attend these competitions that other folks that have been in the culture, as long or longer couldn't afford. Anyway, regardless,
so is coursework like that?
Yeah,
universal? Because it smacks to me of when I was in college. I remember I took a course, the sociology of Star Trek. Just because it had Star Trek in the name and I needed credit hours. But that wasn't like, that's not like a course that's taught all over the planet. There happened to be a professor at my college who was a super fan and decided to do this kind of course they were teaching sociological concepts and stuff, but through this mythological.
They find a way.
Yeah, right. But it's like the study of breaking and that kind of coursework. Is that something that only she has at her college because she made it up? Or is that I'm not aware of that being,
right.
It's not like social studies or, Greek mythology. It's not like that's everywhere, right? It's just there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't, what department does it even fall under? Yeah. To your point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe anthropology. I mean, when you do a PhD, you can get pretty pretty specific and pretty esoteric. It
Yeah.
doesn't, a PhD doesn't necessarily need to have any grounding in established departments
Or usefulness in the real world.
or
Yeah.
usefulness.
Right.
That's right.
Yes. Marcus says she definitely did not benefit from her whiteness. I think her whiteness may have been the issue.
Yeah.
She definitely did not benefit from her whiteness. That's a hard thing to say.
At some point, I have questions about her performance that I want to ask someone who knows much more about breaking than I do. So that can be whenever. So I can
You
hold
could be
that.
the guy up there.
Yeah,
I know who I'm talking to.
and it may not be me because it turns out that because I'm among the folks who, when I first saw these clips, I was like, oh no, I felt terrible for her in a sense, only because I hadn't seen anybody else compete yet, but I have seen the level of people that compete at BC1, and I thought, oh no, this poor woman, she thinks this is breaking where she's from. She's going to get destroyed.
Right. Right.
And I've been in battles as a kid where you you do your little thing, and then you see the other guy go, and you're like, I am not in the right place. And you just try to back
Outclassed.
away slowly.
Outmatched. But you did not know that going in,
No.
right?
Yeah, no.
You did not know it. And
Right.
but she must have,
Yes.
right?
She did. Yes, she did.
She must have. Yeah.
But I was joining the folks that were like kind of poo-pooing this whole thing, but I felt bad for her at first, and then
Yeah.
I thought maybe she's having a go, as they might say overseas. But while I was doing that, the actual breaking community was rallying behind her. Dujan Cullingford, I'm going to say, a veteran New Zealand breaker who attended the Oceania qualifiers, wrote a Facebook post arguing against the idea that she benefited from any factor besides a small talent pool. He emphasized that the community there is tiny. He placed the Australian breakers at around 400 total, and Rush, who I talked about earlier, claimed that the WDSF had to, quote, get people out of retirement in order to make up the numbers of competitors, end quote.
Wow.
Yeah. And also they responded to the idea that some folks were bandying about that maybe they weren't advertising and promoting the competition to, quote, real breakers, but they rejected that idea. They said that there were some folks in the community that just chose not to compete because they didn't want to go to the Olympics.
Okay.
Or they didn't have the cash to be able to come to the competition, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
Or they weren't interested in competing because they felt like it's not part of the culture.
Sure.
Having to, do a command appearance, in front of judges who are going to technically score you. I mean, that's who wins a contest or not is, more vibe and feel than, that.
Yeah.
Although BC1, which seems to be a very well-respected competition for, decades now, they have some sort of judging system. I guess I don't know how those folks feel about that. Anyway, so by all accounts, by these folks, she qualified fair and square.
Yes.
There were 10 judges at the event. The Rush points out that only one was white and none were Australian. Something that was confirmed to Vox. And let's see. I'm going to skip this part so we can get to the end here. So all of this means is that despite this viral narrative, the different things that have been suggested about her, it isn't as simple as writing her interest in the Olympics off as a fluke or, hilarious or privileged corruption.
No.
And according to Gunn, she intended to bring a style of movement to the Paris Games that was less about meeting expectations and more about making an indelible impact. She said, quote, I was never going to beat these girls on what they do best, the dynamic and the power moves. So I wanted to move differently, be artistic and creative, because how many chances do you get in a lifetime to do that, end quote. So yeah, Kat, it seems like she knew what she was getting into. And so she said, fuck it, I'm going to do what I do. I'm going to be me.
And I give her props for that.
Yes.
She ended up there and she did her thing, and she was earnest about it. And it really bugs me that people were so negative about that, because nobody deserves that, right? Yes, she was outmatched. We can say that. Like she didn't, compared to her competitors, they earned the points. But is that a reason to trash her? I don't think so.
Well, no. You know what? The only time I felt like trashing her was when I thought I think she's making fun of us,
Really?
or fun of the sport rather.
Really?
You know,
Oh,
I
You
thought
felt
like,
that initially. Is that right?
Yes.
Like you first
Initially,
saw
I
the
felt
performance?
it.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw like a 15-second clip of her doing the kangaroo,
Okay.
dropping to the floor and running around in a circle or something like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, she's in this, wherever she's from, and it was Australia, obviously.
Yeah.
She's Australia. They don't have a community. They sent this woman, and she's making a goof out of it.
Wow.
That's what I thought. I thought
Got
this is
it.
terrible. So I did feel sort of upset with that, but it turns out that's not true, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as Kat pointed out, by Olympic standards, she didn't do that badly, because if you look at the scoring, for example, with her against the U.S. breaker logistics,
Yeah.
you could see that while she nabbed 0 rounds, a handful of judges had her beating logistics in some subcategories, usually originality, which, let's face it, hands down,
Yeah. Original.
is being original.
Absolutely original.
Meanwhile,
Yes.
while logistics won most categories, she typically only won by a few percentage points at best,
Yeah.
which I think is the most surprising thing to me about it.
Yeah.
As Vox says, was it great? No. Was it bad? Evidently not as bad as we thought.
No, it wasn't. It just
But bad is in the eye of the beholder. It's what do you perceive as good or bad,
yes.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I would never knock anybody for doing something that they believe that was doing their best. So
Yeah.
in that sense, knowing what I know now, more power to you.
Yeah.
Now, folks, just to settle another claim that's not true, the reason breaking is not in the Olympics in LA in 4 years is not because of her performance. It already
That
was
was already
not.
decided. Yeah.
Yes, that was already decided.
Yes.
And in fact, the organization that was fighting to get breaking in the Olympics, they were shooting for the LA Olympics, and they were told no. So then they pivoted to, well, then at least let's get it in for Paris, and they did. Again, I have a problem with that, since popping and locking,
Right?
boogaloo, that dance style is from LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the power moves, all that stuff is more East Coast. Anyway, there you go.
Yeah.
John, you had thoughts?
Yeah. So here's my question for someone who knows way more. First of all, Raygun did a much better job than I would have done had I been saying
Same.
So I'll give her that credit.
Same.
I don't know, Kat. I've seen your moves, so I wouldn't guarantee that. But so, look, I'm admittedly ignorant to the styles that are traditionally, but when I think of breaking, and maybe that's antiquated thinking, I think of a couple of two really distinct styles. One of them being very fluid, almost like this boneless, elastic kind of movement.
Sure.
And the other being very robotic, very the pop and lock, kind of like your joints are independently moving one at a time kind of thing. And what I saw of her performance did not register to me as any kind of breakdancing that I could imagine. It was very herky-jerky. It was very kind of spastic. It was very kind of like seizure-esque. Like nothing in it did I see. Nowhere in her performance did I go, oh, I recognize that as breaking.
Okay.
Yeah. And she did say it's very original. It's all about originality. I guess, but I mean, in other things, in theater, originality is important. But if you opt to do something that no one recognizes as theater, maybe it doesn't count.
Yeah.
So what was your take on that? Is she doing things that you have seen in the evolution of breaking, or was that truly a landmark crazy divergence from what you would expect to see?
Yeah. I suppose my opinion would be, yes, I've seen her do, and some of it, to be honest with you, I've seen her, I've watched some of her other performances.
Oh, yeah.
So
I have too.
outside the Olympics. And so I'm not sure which ones I may be remembering from one or the other, but she definitely has some moves that are, especially when she's up on her feet, like the Apache, some opening moves that you do up on your feet. She seems to have those and understand that. With regard to the other ones, it seems like most of the things I saw, she has an element of something that's almost familiar, but then seems like a novice person, as far as the execution. So it's like, oh, I think she's going to do a windmill or a freeze or a head spin,
and it devolves into that unrecognizable thing.
Yeah.
She meant to do that, but it looks to me, like you said, like, oh, she couldn't quite do that, so she flopped around some.
Yeah. Now, it seems like
she pivoted.
Look, I don't know whether she could. I don't know whether she could actually do those moves or not. But it seems like, at least like we're learned, right? She did what she wanted to do, exactly how she wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
That's what you want to do.
It's vaguely breaking, but again, I would describe it in a way that you someone who just did a few classes and then was like, "Let me out there." I think this is what they showed me.
She had a few moves that I thought, oh, because I think I had a similar. I didn't quite think of it exactly the same way, John, but yes, a few moments of that looks familiar or that looks expected. Yeah, just a little bit though. And there was in one of her battles, the announcers on the video I was watching, they were mostly quiet during hers, and they were saying a lot more ooh, ah, about whoever she was against, right? But she did have one moment where one of the announcer was ooh, nice down, whatever, I forget what they called it, but her way of getting down to the ground had a little little excitement to it, and that was about it.
I see Brandon saying in the comments that he didn't see it, but it sounds like perhaps it was more like interpretive dance.
Brandon,
and that's kind of my point, which is like if you're supposed to be breakdancing and you're doing tap, I mean, it's at what point is it not breakdancing? That was kind of my. That was my whole vibe with her performance. I didn't feel that she was putting us on or whatever. I didn't have that feeling.
No,
it was kind of half what Will said. Like, is she really good enough to be here? And the other half is like, does she know what breakdancing is really? That's how I felt because I didn't see what I associated with traditional breakdancing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's
a
legit.
That's a good point. And Brandon and John, I mean, I have a background in modern dance. And yes, there were plenty of moments where I was like, okay, she has musicality and she has creativity. And a lot of this is reminding me of an improv of just doing whatever, not specifically breaking.
Just not a breaking.
I know that's what she, I know she was going for breaking, but it didn't come across that way.
Didn't stick the landing, as they say at the Olympics.
Yeah.
I realize when you guys are talking what it reminds me of. It reminds me of, and this probably hasn't happened since the 80s or 90s, when I would be at a wedding and some drunk family member would be like, look, I could break dance too. And they would start doing crazy shit, in the middle of the floor. And I'd be like, go, go, go.
Right.
Someone needs to cut him off. Go, go.
And I'm laughing because I agree, but at the same time, I don't want to put her down. I feel like, okay, it wasn't exactly like that.
Again,
That's not what it was.
I thought Kat was going to say, I'm laughing, but at the same time, I was the drunk one at the wedding. That's where I thought she was going.
Yeah.